friends, this is Arabella from Weekend Creative. We are back with another Edit With Me video. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to our channel and coming back. I know that I kind of failed you guys on getting you this video. We kind of promised everyone that once we'd reach 100 subscribers that we would release one, but we're here now and better late than never. So thank you guys again for subscribing, and hopefully we'll be sharing some more tutorials and resources more consistently. So just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this project real quick. We once again collaborated with our friend Claire. She just launched her business. It is finally live. I'll make sure to add her website link to our description, but it is Moodelier.com. And as you know, she creates all of these fun shapes and pieces that we use in our photographs, and we're just obsessed with them. We just did another fun test shoot with her and included these awesome Lo-Fi Aperitifs. So I'll be sharing with you my editing process for this particular image, but I will also link in the description all of the final edited images that are up on our site so that you can check them out. And if you're also interested, we do have a couple of Adobe live streams that we actually also edited live, and you can check that out. One of them was we were editing a GIF, and the other one was a still image that we kind of composited together. So I will make sure to add those links in the description so you can check them out. More great editing tips and tricks will be shared there. But let's get started. Of course, I always start in Lightroom, as I mentioned in my last video. It's just super easy to do a lot of batch editing, especially when you're shooting, a lot of images for one kind of scene or set. It makes it easy to kind of apply all of those edits onto every single image. And so the image that we're going to be working on today is this guy right here. So of course we have, other flavors as well. I'll just quickly show you. And we focused on their 3 flavors. So we have like a sweet vermouth, a dry one, and then the gentian amaro. I hope I'm saying that right. So the one that we're going to be working on is this guy right here, this pink and blue dreamy scene. Ellie did an amazing job, kind of putting everything together, and it just looks amazing. So super excited to be editing this. And, as always, we like to start with editing the color temperature, making sure that our colors are right. So, and then also, any lens correction that needs to happen before we take it over to Photoshop. So I have this one image here where we have the gray card in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure to grab my dropper here and select that gray card right there. Perfect. Okay. And I think this might have been already kind of color corrected because I was working on some other images from this set. So I'll just go ahead and reset it so you guys can see what I mean. So these were the original colors. So it looks a little bit cool, a little bit blue. So of course now when you grab the little dropper and you click on the gray card, it neutralizes it, and those are the colors that it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to go down to the lens correction. Of course, check off the remove chromatic, enable profile corrections, get rid of any weird distortion that is caused by the lens. And that's pretty much it as far as that goes. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this little image here, develop settings, copy settings, and I'm going to copy all of that. And now I'm going to go to the image that we're going to be working on today. And I'm going to apply those same develop settings onto this image. Perfect. And there we go. And now it's a little less cool, a little bit more warm, which we love. And now we are going to be heading over to Photoshop. So right click on that image, edit in, and edit in Adobe Photoshop 2020. And I love that these two programs kind of talk to each other. As if you watched my last video, you know that I love using both of these and kind of going back and forth. In this case too, as we let this kind of open up in Photoshop, I did want to talk a little bit about editing with presets as well, which is something that I'm going to be showing you today. of course, on top of like all the normal edits that I do in Photoshop. Then after we're done here, we're going to take it back to Lightroom, and I'm going to show you how I apply one of our friends' presets. If you're not familiar with DIANE VILLADSEN, you definitely need to go follow her on Instagram. Her @ is DIANE with one N, and she has made these amazing, colorful presets that you can apply to your images, and they're just really beautiful, very pastel and dreamy, which I think would go perfectly with this shoot that we worked on. So yeah. So now that we're in Photoshop, I am just going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. Oh, and actually, even before I do that, see something I like to do before I even start cleaning up the image is kind of fixing any alignment issues. Just making sure that everything is good. So I have my rulers turned on, you guys. So make sure that you have yours turned on so that you can add guides to your image. So, and then the way that you would add a guide is you just click on the ruler and then just drag, right? So I'm gonna just add one guide here for this shape right here because I can see that it's a little bit off. And I'm gonna add one right here as well. And then I do want to add one guide that's horizontal, and I'll just pull that down from above. And actually, so as you can see, there is a bit of a horizon line here. We did use particle boards for the back, and then for the bottom, actually, we used fabric, and then we placed in like a cellophane material on top of that, and then we used an acrylic sheet right over that. So a lot of things going on, but it just kind of added this really fun, like magical effect to it. So we thought it'd be really fun. But we do see a little horizon line here. So I just want to make sure that it looks good. It seems like it's pretty straight. But what I'm more worried about, if anything, is just this little shape here. So I want to make sure that that is straight. So what I'm going to do to start with is I am going to select my entire image. Couple ways you can do that. You can grab your rectangular selection tool or rectangular marquee tool, or if you have a Mac, you can do Command A. Sorry that I don't know any of the shortcuts for PC, but there's plenty of resources out there that tell you what the shortcuts are. So I just grabbed my entire image, and I'm going to do Command T, which is edit and transform. You can also head over to this edit and then transform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, there's a couple of different tools that you can use, but I always like to test different ones out just to, see what will work for me. It's usually either the skew or the warp, which will just help me kind of adjust the image, making sure that everything's aligned. So I'm going to start with skew and see if that will do the trick. So the thing with skew is that you only get so many points, and they're only around the image, so you don't get to actually work within the image. Whereas if you were to do warp, you can change the grid. So in this case, the default is kind of like the skew, it's just points all around. But then you can go up to this section right here where it says grid default, and then you can go to 3x3, you can go to 4x4, you can even go to 5x5. This is actually something that was introduced by Photoshop this year. Super, super helpful tool. It just really makes everything a little bit more customizable about like what points you'd like to actually be moving in the image. So I'm just gonna go back to skew because I think that might help me do the trick. So I'm looking here at this section right here, just making sure that it's gonna be aligned. So I'm gonna grab this point and I'm just slightly gonna go a little over. Perfect. Okay. So notice how when I zoom in, now it's pretty straight. And I might even just grab this point right here on the left hand side, go back in a little bit, maybe a little more. There we go. Perfect. And then now And you can always do a combination of different transform tools. So in this case, you know, now I added this because I changed the image. It's going to grab whatever color you have in your foreground or background and add it to there. So right now there's, you know, it's being taken over by color. So I'm going to switch to warp, and I am going to do maybe a 3x3. And now I'm going to use these points to just bring it out a little bit more. And it only moves it a little bit, right? Because now that I'm choosing to do a grid, it moves the points where I want it to without disturbing what I had already worked on before, if that makes sense. But it's just an easy fix. You could also use, and actually I'm gonna go back because, there we go. I don't want that moving around too much. Oh, and see what happens? You have to be really careful not to mess with too much, because then it starts really distorting the image. So I'm actually gonna get out of this real quick. So I'm gonna hit another button and I'm gonna go back. So one thing that's really helpful for me is always having the history panel open all the time, because then I can just, you know, click back if I didn't like a certain change. Or you can do Command Z if you're on Mac. But I'm gonna do that one more time. So I'm gonna Command T for transform. I'm gonna skew, and I'm gonna bring this over kind of how I did previously. And there we go. And then go down here, bottom. Okay. And I'm gonna hit enter so that you know, adjustment gets saved and I don't have to worry about, you know, I can just take care of each adjustment at a time. Okay. And then of course now I've got this section here. Earlier I tried to do, you know, warping, but maybe I might in this case do a content aware. So I'm going to just get my rectangular marquee tool. You guys, I never have to like say these tools out loud, so it's like really weird to say them, but hopefully, you know, it makes sense. Okay, so grabbing this whole piece right here, and actually I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more because I don't know how far down it goes, but I think that's pretty good right there. Okay, just make sure everything's grabbed. Okay, and then while having that piece selected, I'm gonna right click inside of that selection, and I'm gonna select fill. And you've got in this content section, there's a drop down, and you just want to make sure that you have content aware selected, and leave everything else the same, and you hit OK. And sometimes it might not always work, but sometimes it does, and that's great. So if you can get away with doing that, then perfect. And that actually did a pretty good job. Maybe this looks a little funky right here, so I might go in when I'm cleaning up. I will fix that. But that actually looks pretty good. Or, you know, if anything, I can also crop in too if I decide that I just want to not even have to worry about switching that. And just so you guys know, I have not edited this image at all, so you're literally seeing me kind of figure it all out, because that's kind of editing, you know, it's just problem solving and figuring out solutions for how to make things look pretty. Okay, so pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove my guides because I don't really care for them anymore. I don't want to see them. They're distracting. So I'm going to take them off by going to view, clear guides, and we're set. So that's pretty much that. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and so one thing to know is when you're, you know, changing, distorting the image, automatically the layer that you're working on, that first layer, when you brought it over to Photoshop, it ends up turning into layer 0. I'm not sure necessarily why, except for, you know, because you're editing onto the background layer. But something that I always like to do is just then lock that first initial layer and then just change it back to background. And basically I'm just going to duplicate that layer and I'm going to start cleaning. Oh, there we go. I'm going to rename my layer to clean. Always helpful to name your layers, you guys. Sometimes, oh my gosh, if I ever open up an old Photoshop file, I cringe because I definitely did not name my layers right at all, and they look confusing. So help yourself out by naming your layers. Okay, so cleaning is just pretty basic. I always like to use a combination of a few different tools, and I have done shortcuts personally. As you know, something that's cool about Photoshop is that you can kind of customize your workspace essentially. So you know, I'm always using the spot healing brush tool and the patch tool, occasionally the clone stamp tool too, if I can't, you know, if it's easier. It just depends on what the situation is or what the imperfection is, but usually patch tool and spot healing are my go-to. And one thing that I always like to do as well is, of course, like some of the, you know, part of the image, especially over here on the left side, is a little bit more blown out. So we'll of course like fix that. But when I'm retouching, especially dust, I always like to add like an adjustment layer, usually levels. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken the entire image. And it's just for the purposes of cleaning, because I want to be able to catch any of those, you know, little dust or imperfections, because what happens is later on when I sharpen my images, because, you know, when you're sharpening, it like solidifies all those details and it makes all those details even clearer. If there's any dust that I missed, it'll show up after you sharpen. So definitely want to catch as many, you know, little things as possible, to help save you time. And okay, so now that I have my layer levels adjustment, I'm just going to darken the whole image, and it's going to look a little crazy, but I can always turn it off, but just so I can see everything that's going on, right? So I wouldn't be able to catch as much dust unless I have this turned on, you know? Probably won't need it over in this section, but you know, on this left-hand side, I probably will. Okay, so I will just get started. One of the great things that sometimes when you're photographing like fabric or textures and you're keeping the texture in, sometimes, you know, some of the imperfections might be kind of natural, or you like kind of want them to be there. So it's kind of one of the nice things when you're working with like fabric or anything like that. There's usually not as much stuff to do, which is nice. But, you know, sometimes you go a little crazy. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some retouching here, some cleaning up. I won't bore you, and I'll speed this process up for you. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the kind of dust retouching, imperfections and stuff. So now I'm gonna start correcting some of the lighting. So of course on this left hand side, you can see that it's a little bit blown out. There's some areas where we could really tone down the brights. So I don't need this levels adjustment anymore since it was just for dust retouching. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it, and I'm gonna do an adjustment layer. I'm gonna do a levels, and basically what I'm gonna want to do is kind of just bring down those brights just like slightly. And that what I'm doing here is I have, obviously we can see a histogram here, and I'm bringing in that middle, slider over, which is basically our midtones. And then the slider that's right below it, I'm gonna bring that white slider in just a little bit to kind of bring those brights down. And as you can see, it's affecting the entire image. So that's why we have this mask right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna invert. So Command I, and I'm gonna just paint in with a brush what I want, what I want to edit. So in this case, it's gonna be pretty much just the left side here. So I'm gonna grab a brush, and of course, since I inverted the layer mask, it now shows us a black square. So with a white brush, I'm going to just kind of paint in where I want those brights to kind of, just become more diffused, not as blown out. So I'll just go ahead and grab a big soft brush and kind of keep the opacity pretty low so that I can just paint on over it. And I'm just gonna paint in here slowly. Mostly just taking care of the really bright areas here. And it might not seem as, noticeable at first, but once you turn off the layer and you turn it back on, you'll kind of see the difference. But I just want to take care of these really bright areas right here. Okay, so if you can tell, we just brought those back down just like a tiny bit. Might go over it a little bit more down here. And of course, based on the lighting for this shot, the strobe that we had was coming from the left-hand side. So because we have this fabric, this like velvet crushed fabric, obviously it's going to reflect some light, so it's coming from the left hand side, so this side obviously is just going to be naturally kind of brighter. So that's where it's handy to be able to kind of just adjust that certain area. Okay, and turn it off and on, and you can just see the difference. We can see a little bit more detail, and it's not so in your face, because I do want the viewer's eye to kind of like lead in, and kind of, instead of going straight for the bright areas, kind of just flow through the entire image. Perfect. Okay, great. And now that that's all set, now I'm going to basically do some dodging and burning. And there's multiple ways that you can do this. For me personally, it totally depends on the image really, but sometimes I'll do, a layer with 50% gray and I'll just paint in with a brush. Sometimes I'll do, what I did here with the levels adjustment. and just paint in the areas that I want brightened. Sometimes I work directly into the image as long as I duplicate a layer. So I think for this one in particular, one of the cool things that I've gotten recently is this little panel called the Beauty Retouch panel. It's actually really meant for kind of portraits and stuff, but it's been super helpful for me to just kind of have something that will easily just create, you know, it has actions, essentially Photoshop actions that will just make your editing life easier, basically. So in this case, there's a dodge and burn section, there's frequency separation, and this is the Beauty Retouch version 3.3 by the Retouching Academy. So feel free to check it out. Maybe I'll do a blog post on it and tell you guys a little bit more about it, but just wanted to show you real quick what it does. Basically, you know, if I'm going to do a dodge and burn using the 50% gray layers, I'm going to click on that and it's automatically going to make a dodge and burn gray layer set for me. So if I put this away and open up this folder, there is two layers underneath. There's one for dodging and one for burning. And so I'm going to bring it down underneath the levels because I want to just make sure that it's good. So let's see. So for this layer, it's basically to brighten, right? So we paint with a soft white brush. And we're going to do something we're going to have like a really small brush and a low opacity as well. And we just want to paint the areas that we want brightened. And obviously we don't want to go too overboard. And I'm being pretty loose about where I'm painting. But, you know, slowly making a couple little adjustments here. And can you tell the difference? I'm turning it off, turning it on. And basically what I want to do is I just want to brighten my brights. And just make it give it a little oomph, a little extraness. Sometimes I'll grab a pretty big brush for some bigger areas, like labels, especially. This kind of area is already pretty bright, so I don't want to touch it too much. And I always like to see where, like, you know, basically what I'm adjusting by turning on and off the layer so I can see what my changes look like. And I might want to brighten up some of this tool here as well, make it stand out a little bit more than it, you know, sometimes it kind of blends. And the cool thing about this set is that it does, you know, it automatically adds like a layer mask to each of the layers, so that if you feel like you went overboard, you know, you can easily turn down the opacity or, you know, use the layer mask that's provided and just kind of paint back in what, you know, just to kind of reduce what you have done, the adjustments that you have made. And I'm now just kind of adding some brightness into some of these florals. Some of them are artificial, and some of them are dried florals that have been dyed into these really fun colors. For this shoot, we really wanted to kind of create like a mystical feel, very like Wonderland-y, kind of unreal or surreal, and you know, we really wanted to work with some florals that didn't look, you know, real, just to add that extra element here. It's really easy to go overboard sometimes, so you want to make sure that you definitely always practice non-destructive editing, because then it's very much easier to go back if you mess up or if you do too much. But here I'm just brightening up some of the florals. Some of these florals we ended up getting from Etsy or A Floral. Like I said, some of them are artificial, some of them are real dried flowers. And now to see what I did. Okay, great. So I just kind of added, you know, little simple things here and there. I stayed away from the left side because it's kind of already bright, so I might actually end up, you know, taking away some of that brightness in the darken layer that I have in my Dodge and Burn set. So pretty happy with that. It looks awesome. Just added a little bit extraness. And so now I'm on the darker, to the darken layer. So now I'm going to paint with a black brush instead. So in this case, usually, so obviously for, you know, when you're dodging, it's kind of typically all the brights and then brightening up any areas, brightening up shadows or anything that you feel needs to be brightened up. With darken, I usually like to go over a lot of like text on labels, or, you know, bringing down anything that's overexposed, that just needs a little bit extra help. So in this case, I'm going to darken first the text here. And one of the things that I always struggle with when it comes to using a gray, 50% gray layer is that when I start trying to darken some of the text, it will darken like everything else around it too. So I might have to do something else for the text, but we will see. Let me see. So I've got a black soft brush, low opacity, and let's give it a go. That wasn't too bad. I'm still not super obsessed, because then the label kind of darkens as well. So I think what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to create a new layer from my clean layer, and I'm going to call this one Burn. And I'm going to grab my burn brush. I personally just love using the actual tools versus, you know, other methods. I know that the other methods are supposed to be non-destructive, but for me, I just like that I can decide what gets picked up or what gets burned or what gets dodged. So in this case, when you use the burn tool or the dodge tool, you can select what range. So you know, I always like to go to shadows, so that it literally only darkens anything that it thinks is a shadow. So, and then it doesn't affect what's around it, because usually what happens is, right, like text is darker and the label color is usually, you know, lighter. So I personally just like that better, but you know, to each their own. As long as you you get the good results, right? And I'm just going over it pretty loosely. I'm not like too worried about it. It's already pretty dark as it is, but I just want to go over it really quickly. And something that I'll do is also darken some of the darks. This is actually pretty dark already, so I'm gonna leave that like that. But even something like down here, I like to just kind of darken a little bit of it. Okay, cool. I think that's pretty good for that. But I am gonna change the range, and I'm gonna do highlights because I actually want to continue kind of removing some of the brightness in this area. I might end up cropping it, so you know, who knows, but I will, you know, I'd like to just keep it here for now, and still do it on over here on this side because you never know. So I'm just gonna kind of take out some of those highlights. And once I turn off my burn, you can kind of see where I've affected the image so that, you know. I'm also going to do this like section right here as well. And I don't want to overdo it, of course, because then it starts looking a little weird. But just like enough. And then when I turn off my burn layer, you can see where I have adjusted, and that already looks better. It just helps you see that tool a little bit better on that side. Okay, cool. So I will leave it at that. I'm just gonna remove this darken layer because I don't really need it. Perfect. Okay, great. And then now I am going to sharpen my image. So if you watched our last video, you know that we like to use the high pass sharpening method. You know, there's many methods, so as long as whatever works for you. We personally love that kind of really high sharpened look. And so we found that when we do the high pass sharpening method, it kind of works best. So I'm just what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my entire image, so Command A, and I'm gonna Command Shift C for copy merged. And basically what that means is that it's just gonna grab what it sees here. Oh, and actually before I even do that, before I even copy merged, I wanna remove this levels layer because I only want what's affected before the layers after this. So I am just going to do that copy merge thing again and paste. And now I'm going to turn back on those layers. So I'm going to rename this layer to sharpen, and then now I'm going to go to filter, other, high pass. And depending on how much, you know, how much sharpening you want, you can just kind of play with the radius. I like to stick anywhere between, you know, 1.2 to 2.0 pixels. So I'm gonna go to like maybe 1.7. Basically what it's doing is it's, you know, kind of like just outlining or defining all the edges in your image. I'm gonna press OK, and it looks crazy right now, but then, you know, the trick is to change the blending mode to, you could either do soft light or linear light. Linear light is our preference because it just gives us more of that sharper look, overly sharpened, which we love, but soft light is great too, either or. And I'm just going to select a linear light, and that looks awesome. Love it. It's crazy how much sharpening happens with when you do linear light. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And now I'm going to show you how we take it back to Lightroom. So we've got our image here, right? So, and I'm going to real quick grab this and make sure that this looks straight. It looks a little funky, but maybe that's just my eyes playing with me. And you know what? Maybe something that I can do actually is go to my crop, and I'm gonna use the straighten tool to see if this is straight. So I'm gonna grab that point right here. Seems like it's pretty straight. Then I'm gonna crop it. Okay. I mean, that looks pretty good to me. I kind of still feel like it's a little off, so could just be me, but you know. Okay. I think that's like a little bit better. I think I will be happy. Okay, awesome. Okay, see, that looks better to me. I don't know why, but I feel like my eyes play tricks on me, you guys. Like they just do. Yeah, thanks so much for bearing with me during this process. I want to be as transparent as possible and just kind of show you how I think about things, or like what I'm thinking. I'll try to talk out loud if I'm like, you know, struggling with something or whatever. You know, we're all in this to learn. So, you know, I'm learning every single time I edit. So yeah, just always wanting to share as much as possible. So hopefully this is helpful. Okay, so now that we fixed that, now that, you know, I've realized that I'm not going crazy and now this looks good to me, I'm going to hit save, which funny enough, I have not saved the project at all during this entire time. So I'm like, you know, make sure that you guys save, because you never know when Photoshop is going to crash. Thankfully, you know what? I have to hand it to them. 2020 has not crashed on me at all. Yet, at least. Who knows? I can't, you know, knock on wood. But yeah, so definitely save your project, you guys. And with that, because we're going to go back to Lightroom, one of the cool things is that when you save your project on Photoshop, and because we had come from Lightroom, now when we head over back to Lightroom, right in our set, it's the new edited image that we just worked on will pop up in this, you know, in this section right here, right before this image. So you'll get to see it in just a second as it finishes saving, but then we're gonna go into how we apply a preset, and there it is. Cool. So we started with this other image, and I'll show you guys real quick. So this is what we started with, and then this is where we're at now. And it doesn't seem as crazy, you know, the difference. I love the colors already. So, I mean, you know, it's already beautiful in my eyes, but definitely this was something that I had in my mind. We had thought about using DIANE's presets for this because I feel like it's just kind of perfect. It just goes with the vibe. So now that we've got our edit here, obviously when I scroll here, you can notice that in this section right here, it says 5468-edit, and that is the edited version that we just worked on. So, you know, it kind of starts out as like basically it's like a new file. And now I'm gonna head over to my presets section and I'll show you Diane's amazing presets. Make sure to go follow her, Diane with one N. She came out with these presets called Pop Candy, and she named them all after kind of candy names, and super fun. These are most of these presets kind of work best for, you know, kind of outdoor portraits or portraits where, you know, when you shoot them, you underexpose them, because what ends up happening in a lot of these presets, they make your image really bright. So this image is already, you know, bright as it is. So of course, when you apply a preset, it's going to look a little crazy. But I have this really cool tool or plugin that I added to Lightroom Classic. I'm sure it's out there. It's called the fader. And basically what it does, because the thing is, I know that, you know, when you're using an editing app, you usually have a slider, and that slider allows you to, when you apply a preset or when you apply a filter or anything like that, that slider is like your opacity or the level, the strength of your filter. And so in Lightroom, there isn't anything like that. When you apply a preset, you apply it at its full 100%. So that's where the fader comes in, and when it's like really handy, because right now I already know which filter I'm gonna apply to this because I've already done a different image. So I'm gonna be applying the Marzipan. I hope I'm saying that right. And when I apply it, look how crazy it looks. It's like too much, right? So what the fader helps me do is only apply like a little bit, because I only want a little bit of that filter in this image. So I'm going to go to the fader. I'm going to try and find that filter for you guys, or this plugin, I mean, and then include it in, you know, the description so that you guys can go check it out or download it. I can't remember if I purchased it or not, or if it was free. I can't really remember, but I will definitely look for it and include it in the description. But anyway, so basically this is what pops up, is the fader. And I'm going to go to my folder. I have so many presets, you guys. So I'm going to go to that folder of Diane's, which is the Pop Candy one. And I'm going to go to the preset that I want to apply. So Marzipan. And of course, it's going to go straight to 100, right? I don't want that, so I am going to bring that down. And I'm gonna, you know, go slow. I'm gonna do maybe like 10 and then just like increase it a little bit until I'm like happy. And I'm just gonna wait for it to show me what it kind of looks like, because I do want to see it at, you know, 10 opacity. And just kind of build from there. And sometimes it takes a little while, you know, don't be alarmed. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to push it a little bit, maybe like 20 this time. Or something around that. There we go. Maybe I'll go 25 or something. Perfect. And of course, you know, all of these adjustments, like all of Diane's presets have adjustments that are specific to color mainly, but also, you know, there's other things in it as well, especially when it comes to like highlights and shadows and all of that. So I, you know, as soon as I finish applying this preset, I'm going to fix some of that, because I don't want, you know, these highlights to be blown out. So once that's all set, I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to do some further adjustments. And that's almost going. Sometimes you have to be patient. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And I'm just going to go look at the basic adjustments here. And I'm going to fix some of these. So in this case, I'm going to bring that down. Okay, and so down here below the image, there's a couple little buttons, one with RA, one with YY. Basically, these are super helpful because then you can see kind of like a before and after. So you can either do a reference view or the before and after, which is the YY. RA is mostly, you know, basically you want to like reference one particular image, any image. It doesn't even have to be your before and after, but just so that, you know, you can see how cohesive everything is. But I usually like to just do the Y, and then I can see, and these are very subtle edits, you guys. So like you can tell that the blue kind of got a little bit deeper, a little bit, you know, more colorful. And I just like to look around to see how some of the how some of the props have changed. Yeah, very subtle, but very, very cool. Perfect. And there's so many things that you can do in Lightroom too. Like there's just endless adjustments that you can just continue to make. But I'm pretty happy with this. Sometimes I'll do a couple little adjustments and kind of play around with some of the sliders and see what happens. And right now I'm just kind of playing with the color and just kind of selecting each color and just kind of playing with the hue. I kind of love that. And again, going back and forth, seeing how this all changes. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I love it. Okay, and now that I'm ready to export, and actually, you know what I do want to do is I'm going to crop it. And let's see, I'm going to play around with a few things. Maybe kind of right there. That looks pretty good right there. and I'm cropping to a 4x5 because that will fit Instagram really well. I can also crop this as a square too. It's totally, you know, I can decide what I would like to do, but I'm going to keep it as a 4x5 for now. And I can always go back, you know, I can change it. I can, you know, it's not like I crop it and it, you know, it's bye forever. Okay, and so I'm going to hit done. Okay, so now I'm ready to export. So I am going to go to File, Export, and I am going to be exporting for web. You know, this most likely will end up on social or on our website. So I'm going to just go ahead and rename this. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what, okay, so a sweet vermouth. Just make sure that I know what that image is. And I have the file settings already set to JPEG. I'm going to limit my file size to 1,000 bytes. And under image sizing, I'm going to resize to fit the, so basically I want the long edge to be X pixels. So in this case, I probably don't need it to be this large, maybe 2400 being the long edge, and keeping this resolution the same. Great, done. And I'm going to export that. That's pretty quick. Oh, what I didn't do actually is make sure that I was exporting it in the right place. So hopefully it knew where to go. But if not, oh, yep. Yeah, I did. Great. Love it. Love when that happens. Okay. And here we go. And here's our final image. Pretty cool. And here is one of our other group images that we edited as well. So it's all gonna live together, which is awesome. Yeah. So hope you guys enjoyed that edit with me. I'm going to be doing some more as well. Some more videos as we go along. Hopefully different ones too that show different techniques, so that you guys can see more of our process. You know, every project is super different. So, you know, you just never know what you might be doing. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let us know if you have any questions or comments. Tell your friends about our channel and have them subscribe if they want to check out any more editing videos. And follow us on Instagram @WeekendCreative. Thank you so much. See you next time.